One of the most magnificent halls in all of Oxford, England, is at what is called New College, or St. Mary's College. It's a college from the 14th century, and you walk into their dining hall, or their commons hall, and it is absolutely magnificent with this beautiful medieval woodwork and soaring ceiling with these vast oak beams. And but the story behind those oak beams is really one of the most remarkable stories of foresight and planning that I've ever heard. In the 14th century, the building was built and the beams were carved. But by the 1950s, it was evident that dry rot had begun to set in. And so the college trustees began to cast about to find a way to replace the beams. So they put out to lumber contractors all throughout Great Britain first, and then later to the continent of Europe. But beams of sufficient quality and size could not be found. So they began to put out bids all across the world, throughout Asia and the Americas, and still no beams of sufficient quality or quantity could be secured. And so the trustees began to consider the inconceivable, and that was that they would have to go to some sort of a laminated beam. But it was at about that time that, according to some stories, a janitor, or still other stories, a student intern, came across the old plans for the college. But when the scroll was unrolled and the parchment was examined, what the trustees discovered was an astonishing plan. Back in the 14th century, the designers of this beautiful, beautiful college knew that one day the beams would have to be replaced. And so they had had the foresight to prepare for that eventuality. Oak trees had been planted along the edge of the college. The story is told that when the trustees were meeting, they had the parchment spread out, and as it was being explained to them, they simply lifted their eyes to the window and looked out at this vast array of magnificent oak trees. The designers of that college had planned 500 years ahead. We who have difficulty planning even 5 years ahead have a very hard time imagining how you could think that far ahead. But the reality is that they weren't just thinking about the beams. They had thought through the plantings and the gardens of the entire college. They believed in planning for the future, laying strong foundations and creating the resources necessary for generations ahead. That kind of vision is unique to a Christian worldview. Alas, it's the kind of vision that has largely been lost in modern Christendom, but it's a vision that I trust we can begin to recover, which is precisely why classical Christian education is so vital. It really is the planting of oak trees long, long before they are needed. It's recognizing in the acorns of this moment's opportunity the future beams to support the glories of the unfolding of Christian civilization.